Welcome back. Today we are talking with Regina Phelps. Regina, thanks for all that update on COVID. I wish we didn't have to have that talk after
Me too.
2.5 years. However, let's move into something that is also capturing the headline attention. Monkeypox.
Yes. People are going to think that this is the only thing I do professionally is talk about infectious diseases, which is not the case, but yeah, wow. Okay. So monkeypox is something I get a lot of phone calls about, not just from clients, but also friends and family members. Like, should I be worried about this? It's getting a little creepy. I don't know what's going on, blah, 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 blah. So let me just talk a little bit about this. I know we covered it briefly in our last month's conversation, but my goodness, we have a lot more cases since last month. And so it's important. And of course, the World Health Organization has now declared it a public emergency. Boy, I wish they would have done that last month, and why they didn't, I don't know, but it's really a problem. And so let me just talk briefly about this. So monkeypox, just to sort of start at the beginning, is a viral infection that originally hailed out of Africa. And it basically is in two areas of Africa: the DNC, the
Democratic.
Thank you, the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's like, what was I thinking? The Democratic Republic of Congo. That particular version of monkeypox is a little bit more onerous, has about a 10% fatality rate. The version that we have now circulating around the world is from West Africa. And that particular form of monkeypox has a lower fatality rate, around 1 to 2%, which that's a good thing. It has nothing to do with monkeys, which I know is confusing. It actually is a disease spread amongst the rodent population. But when it was discovered in the late 50s, it had actually been infecting monkeys, but it wasn't originally from a monkey. But that I know is a little confusing.
Oh, okay.
But this particular outbreak started, the general belief is it started about 3.5 months ago, but there's also been some concern that it's been circulating longer than that. And the reason for that is that really the vaccination against smallpox has stopped about 40 years ago in the United States and probably a good part of North America. I don't know about Canada. Do you know when you guys quit vaccinating for smallpox?
Oh, that was years ago.
Right,
I
right.
remember the generation before me all have
Yeah,
the
the little
scar
marks,
from the
right?
shot, and I
Yeah.
don't. So it was before, before my time even.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so what happened is that because smallpox is the only disease that's ever been successfully eradicated, there's none circulating in the world, that vaccination was stopped. And you may say, well, smallpox is not monkeypox, and that's true. However, the virus that was used to develop the smallpox vaccine was monkeypox. And so when you got vaccinated for smallpox, you actually were essentially vaccinated for monkeypox as well. So there's just a lot of, the population around the world that's under the age of 40 is huge. It's about around 60% of the world has not been vaccinated for smallpox. And so therefore, there's a lot of available persons who could become infected. So just keep that in the back of your mind. So this particular outbreak was really believed to start in Europe, very likely in Spain and Portugal, and it originally started primarily amongst gay men. And so in this particular outbreak, now we're at about 17,000 documented cases of monkeypox around the world in 74 countries. Now, it primarily has been affecting men who have sex with men. But I want to remind you, so people think, well, okay, that's not me, or it's not people I hang around with, or it's not my concern. I do want to remind you of one other disease that has ravaged the globe for many years now, which is HIV, which originally started in the gay community, men who have sex with men, but then it has migrated to affect large numbers of people, regardless of their sexual orientation. So I would encourage you to think about this much more broadly than you might. Now, the other thing, as we mentioned before we started chatting on tape, is that this has also been found, it recently affected a child in Europe. They're not quite sure how that happened. They believe it was because that child came in contact with a lesion, probably maybe from a parent. because they have lesions on their face, or could be in different parts of their body, and that child became infected. So this is not just a disease of men who have sex with men. So you need to just sort of think about that very clearly in your mind. Now, this particular disease has a treatment, which is great. It has a vaccine, which is great. But part of the things is both of those treatments and the vaccines are not widely available because we haven't had this problem for a long time.
Mhm.
So here in the US, what's happened is that there has been a significant push now to create many more vaccines, as well as the antiviral that treats monkeypox. The other thing I would say that's been really challenging about this outbreak is that when you look at if you go to online and you look at photos of monkeypox, what's presenting in clinics where people may come in and they have lesions don't look like this body that is covered with pox marks. And these pox marks are hard nodules. They're not like a pimple. I mean, they're hard nodules. You have to really work to break them. But once they get bigger and bigger, they will break on their own. And so there's a whole process that if physicians are not aware of even what they could look like or how to even swab them, they really need to look at the CDC or the World Health Organization websites, physicians and patients, so that they clearly understand what needs to be done to both diagnose the illness, but also to make sure that those samples are collected correctly so that they can actually then validate that. Here in the US, there's now 5 commercial laboratories that are doing testing for monkeypox. And we had the same problem here in the US, I don't know about Canada, where the CDC for the first 2 months of this outbreak was the only place that test results could be sent to and gotten. And now they've actually released the testing agents and materials to 5 commercial labs. So it's much easier to get tested here in the US. The vaccines are really in short supply. I have several good friends of mine, gay men who were keen to get vaccinated. One of them waited for 7 hours in a line yesterday at the Department of Public Health in San Francisco in order to get vaccinated, because it's again, there's a real huge shortage of vaccines. Now,
sorry, I just thought, is it the same players making these vaccines as well as those for COVID? Like the Pfizers and
no, it's not.
No, okay.
It's a different company, but they have really kicked up supplies, and so you should be seeing more of those available. So you may be saying, so should I get vaccinated? Should I be worried about this? Am I going to lose sleep over this? So again, I want to say, without stigmatizing the community, MSM as it's called, men who have sex with men, is that primarily now that is where it is located. But I want to remind you that this is spread. How is it spread? It's spread primarily through direct contact. Your skin touching skin that has either a pock or some sort of lesion on it, where you can actually get the illness. So it could be through sex, it could be kissing, it could be touching, it could be anything like that. If a mom had it on their body and they touched a baby, that's how, it's physical contact. There also is, there is some transmission in the air, but it's not like COVID. So I don't want people to freak out. It's like if you were sleeping right next to somebody all night long and they had monkeypox, there is some transmission that could occur in a very confined space with that kind of very close proximity. It can also be spread if somebody is touching fabric, such as sheets or towels or clothing, where there's a lesion that has drained onto those pieces of fabric and you touch it. You could actually infect yourself. So those are the primary mechanisms of infection. Is it going to affect the vast majority of people? Knock on wood, probably not. But that means that we should still all be aware of what's going on. Do you have any sense of what the Canadian cases are? I was going to see if I have that on my list.
To be honest, no. I was watching. I didn't look up the monkeypox status here in Canada today. I was looking at all the COVID to find out what was going on, and paying attention to the Pope and his visit with the Indigenous people. And
right.
So I was focusing on those 2 things today. I didn't actually get the chance to follow
That's
up on
right.
what was happening with monkeypox. I do know that counts. The last time I heard an announcement was on the weekend, listening to the radio in the car, and numbers are going up. Not drastically, but more cases are being found. So
Mhm.
that's really the only update I know of what's happening here in Canada right now.
I was trying to see really quickly if I actually could find that, but I don't think so. Yeah, I don't. Let me see.
Just out of curiosity,
Yeah, I don't see it.
with the uptick in COVID and the concern with monkeypox, could we be heading in a direction where people are just panicking unnecessarily?
Um,
Because you mentioned you can come in contact with people. Well, first thing I think of is the subway in Toronto,
right,
which is
right.
always jam packed. Like squeeze everybody in, like Japanese subway cars. You
Mhm.
know, do we have to get to that point, or
I don't know. I will say to you is that when this is so that we're like on month 3 now of this outbreak globally, and I in my client population and friends of mine, I've had more people reach out to me just to chat about this for in the last week than I have the entire time. So I think there's a lot more anxiety. I think the fact that that one child became infected freaked a little bit more people out. The fact that there's been a slow response also has also driven some anxiety. But then, frankly, the fact that there was a case of polio in New York. Did you see that?
yeah, I heard
Last
that.
week, right? So what I want to remind people is that we are in an unusual time in so many ways about diseases and infectious diseases in particular. And that is that there's a huge push, as we know from the pandemic, of really what I would call an anti-science mindset, of which in particular, a lot of discounting of vaccines, and in certain parts of the United States where there are less uptake in vaccines, for measles, mumps, rubella, polio, many childhood diseases like pertussis and chicken pox and blah, 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 blah. So what that means is that we have a larger part of the population that is susceptible to diseases that, frankly, 20 years ago, I personally would have never been thinking about, I should be thinking about measles or I should be thinking about polio. I mean, no, that never crossed my mind, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I cannot tell you the last time I heard of anybody having chicken pox,
Right.
but I've heard on the radio now that there are cases that are cropping up. Same thing with measles. You mentioned them, and I haven't heard of anybody having that since I was a kid.
Right.
And now
Right.
suddenly it's being reported. I
Right.
don't understand it. All the advancements we have, and we seem to be going backwards.
Right. Well, I totally agree with you. And I think part of that, again, is that, some of it could have been, you say, could be the pandemic, right? The fact that many really young children maybe didn't get all of their vaccines at the right time based on the fact that we had this big global pandemic. And hopefully, and actually that's a problem worldwide. And hopefully there'll be a big effort in public health to catch those kids up so they're not going to be exposed. But there's on top of that is this large anti-vaccine movement that is driving people to question the validity of vaccinating people for diseases that don't appear to be circulating. But the reason that we don't have circulating viruses is because there's no susceptible populations. Once we stop vaccinating people, as we're seeing with monkeypox, i.e. smallpox, those diseases can then begin to take root and spread. And so I think it's really important to understand that vaccines are one of the greatest miracles in medical history. And the fact that we don't have things like polio or measles or chicken pox. And you may say, well, it wasn't a big deal when I got it. Well, measles is a good example. It kills thousands and thousands of kids across the world every year. Measles. Can be very debilitating. Polio still right now because of COVID and also because of some parts of the country, like in Pakistan and in Iraq, and in Afghanistan, where the Taliban has actually prevented workers from vaccinating kids. Polio is actually present in those communities every day. And that's horrible. And so I think to your point, Alex, is that there's an anxiety about this, but there's also this huge backlash about science. And I think we're really seeing that. And when I saw that polio case in New York with a 20-year-old who'd never been vaccinated for polio, who went abroad and got it and is paralyzed, like, what kind of sense is that? I mean, I don't know what to do with that.
I've gone my entire life and never heard of a single person having polio that
Right.
That hits the news. And then when I heard it just a little while ago, I was astounded,
Right.
especially to know that it was in North America, Canada
Right.
or the US. And I was just, wow, that's unheard of. But correct me if I'm wrong, with chickenpox too, if you have chickenpox as a child, it can come back like long COVID, come back and hurt you in other ways later in life.
Yes. Yes, it can actually. I'm having a moment where I can't think of what the illness is. There's a neurological illness that you get vaccines for. And what is it? Oh my gosh, my brain is stuck. I can't remember it.
And you'll probably remember after we stop recording.
I know.
But
Shingles. I know it starts with an S. Shingles.
Shingles.
Shingles is actually a viral disease that's caused from having chickenpox as a young person. And now there are vaccines for shingles, which is actually what happens is that the chickenpox virus actually will reactivate. And when it reactivates usually in some person on the trunk of the body, but not always, with really serious, painful lesions. It can be, incapacitating. But there are vaccines for that now. But that assumes that you do vaccines, right?
Yeah. I just thought of another question. You mentioned there were 2 strains of monkeypox.
Yes, there are 2.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
They
call them clades, is the official medical term. 2 kinds of clades. One in the DNC, Democratic Republic of Congo, and then the other is in West Africa.
And it would, just to equate that to COVID, so maybe people can understand, would one have come before the other and one is a variant?
They don't know that exactly.
They don't know.
They don't know which one came first, but it is like that in the sense of they are very similar, but the one in Congo is actually much more lethal. It's almost like saying the example I could give you it's related to SARS-CoV-2 would be MERS, which is a coronavirus. It's very similar. It kills 35% of the people that get it. It's hard to get. It's primarily from camels, and it's still circulating primarily in the Middle East today.
Yeah.
Thank goodness SARS-CoV-2, has a death rate of about 1 or 2% globally, and it's very easy to get. But they're similar. The viruses are similar, but they're really different animals. So that's really how I would say to look at the difference between monkeypox in Congo versus monkeypox in West Africa. Okay.
We only have about 4 minutes left.
Did we talk again?
We talked a lot again. Yeah. We still had 2 more segments we wanted to talk about, but maybe you could take 3 of those 4 minutes and just kind of give us a hint of what we're going to talk about next month.
Great. I'd be happy to. Today on LinkedIn, I actually published a piece. I'd written an article not that long ago, a blog post for Unsolve, and it's on the concept of shifting baselines. I've been really interested in this topic for some time professionally, and it's not my origin topic, although it originally came out of the environmental movement. And if you were to define what a shifting baseline is, what it means is essentially is the failure to recognize a change. And the way this was originally looked at in the environmental movement is, like from generation to generation, people will think like, well, boy, it doesn't get cold like it used to, or gee,
in my day.
In my day, right? So we over time see changes. And then the next generation doesn't even know those things because they weren't there. They didn't see those things. And a good example of that would be looking at fisheries, like say in Canada or in the east or west part of the United States, where people would say, oh, back in the day, there were big harvests of fish or a lot more cod or a lot more whatever. And now there's nothing. But the younger generation doesn't really know that. So what they see as normal is what they're looking at right now. And what I've been trying to equate to my clients is that we, in the field of continuity planning and crisis management and resiliency, is that what we are becoming used to is something really different than what even 10 or 20 years ago would mean. And the best example I can give you is that in my history of my practice, which is since 1982, that every time there was a big disaster over the last 40 years, that's how long I've been in practice. At the beginning part, when I first started, there was a big earthquake. People were just like, oh my gosh, there's so many things we need to do. We need to really work on this. And we'd have a lot of energy. And then the next time there was something happen, a little less energy. Next time, a little less. And then at 9/11, September 11th, huge, oh my gosh, in the United States, when that occurred, the World Trade Centers toppled and everybody was really energized. But since then, things like Katrina, Hurricane Sandy, Irene, all of those others, the interest level is dropping down to, now people get their blood pressure raised for like 20 minutes and then they stop. Why this is important to understand is that in our profession, shifting baselines is a huge deal. And I want to talk about, when I meet you next month, what we should all be thinking about in our professions to make sure that we are adequately looking to, adjusting to, planning for the appropriate risk, and not our increased tolerance for all of these risks.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to that chat.
Well, I'll tell you, I think it's the challenge of our profession.
Yeah, I think so too. And well, I'll save all my comments for next month.
Good. I'll be waiting with bated breath.
Regina, thanks very much. I really appreciate you joining once again, giving us updates and clarifying things for us. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you. Always great to be with you, Alex.
And everybody watching and listening, stay prepared, everybody.
If you like that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.